Welcome to Cinema Bites, your go-to for a movie recaps in a flash. Big twists, epic moments, all in just minutes. In the farmland, we see Oliver and his son Henry, accompanied by a young man named Tucker, herding a flock of sheep back to the barn. Everything seems perfectly fine, but Angus, Henry's older brother, watches from a distance, filled with jealousy and resentment because he isn't as skilled as his younger brother in farm work. Adding to his bitterness, Angus has a broken leg and is forced to stay home all day doing nothing. Out of spite and frustration, he decides to take it out on his brother. He goes to Henry's pet sheep, Dudley, holding a small axe or hatchet. Minutes later, Henry returns to the farm on his motorcycle and looks for Dudley but can't find him. He checks inside the barn and is horrified when pieces of Dudley's body fall from the ceiling. To make matters worse, he finds his brother Angus wearing the poor sheep's skin. Angus approaches and attacks him, leaving Henry utterly terrified. At that moment, one of the farm workers, Senora Mac, enters and interrupts the scene, informing them that their father had a motorcycle accident and passed away before he could be saved. Fast forward 15 years. Henry has left the farm and moved to the big city, but now he's returning to visit his late father's farm. However, due to the old traumatic incident and what his brother did, Henry has developed a phobia of sheep to the point where he can't even go near one. On his way back to the farm, he meets two environmental activists, one named Experience and the other named Grant, who are also heading to the same location. These activists suspect there's a secret lab on the farm conducting cruel and horrifying experiments on animals, and they plan to expose the truth. When Henry arrives at his old home, the place seems empty. He enters and looks at photos of his father in the office, but suddenly feels a gun pointed at his back. Luckily, the person holding the weapon turns out to be Senora Mac, who apologizes upon recognizing Henry, mistaking him for a thief or a stranger. She hugs him, and after catching up on the past, Henry goes to find his brother Angus, who had specifically invited him back to the farm to buy out his share. When Henry finds him, he's unsure if he really wants to sell his share, as the farm is the only memory he has left of his father. Angus assures him he'll pay him in advance and takes him to his office to give him the check. Neither of them notices that the environmental activists have already arrived at the farm and discovered the location of the secret lab. Nearby, they spot a woman named Dr. Stride Hash and her team of assistants carrying a mysterious load. When the doctor and her team aren't looking, Grant sneaks over to see what's in the cargo and finds 3 cylinders, but the doctor catches the intruder and orders her team to chase after him. Grant grabs one of the cylinders and escapes with Experience into the forest. Once they've gotten some distance, the two examine the cylinder closely and discover that it contains a genetically modified organism. Now they have evidence to incriminate the farm owners and put an end to these experiments once and for all. However, Dr. Stride and her assistants appear in the forest and continue searching for the 2 intruders. Grant runs ahead to distract them, but during the chase, he trips over a tree branch, causing the cylinder to fall. When he gets back up, he searches for the cylinder and finds that its glass has shattered from the fall and the creature inside has disappeared. Moments later, the creature appears behind him, and he discovers it's a zombie sheep. The zombie sheep bites Grant on the ear, but after a tough struggle, Grant manages to get rid of the creature and throws it away. However, the bite infects him, and he begins to feel unwell. Meanwhile, Henry signs the sale papers and asks Angus what he plans to do with the farm. Angus tells him he's investing in the field of modern agricultural science and is about to revolutionize the industry with his new project. Now that the sale is finalized, Angus asks his brother to leave. Before leaving, Henry goes to bid farewell to Senora Mac, who gives him a farewell gift, their father's old trophy cup from when he won the local sheep shearing competition. Senora Mac also tells Henry that his childhood friend Tucker is now the farm manager and asks him to show Henry around the rest of the farm. Henry and Tucker are thrilled to reunite. They take the truck and head to the field where the sheep flock is kept. Meanwhile, the mutated zombie sheep arrives at the same location and begins luring another small sheep with its strange noises. The small sheep approaches the strange creature but gets bitten on the snout by the zombie sheep. Later, Tucker drives Henry to the field in the truck, and they suddenly find a small sheep standing in the middle of the road with an injured snout. Henry's phobia prevents him from approaching, but Tucker assures him everything is fine and takes the sheep to the other side of the fence. Just as they step out of the truck, Experience appears with a gun taken from inside the truck. She points the weapon at them and orders them to walk with her into the forest, asking where Grant is. Neither of them knows who she's talking about, but Henry mentions that his brother Angus might be able to help her find her friend. Upon learning that Henry is Angus's brother, she becomes furious and threatens them. However, the gun's safety is on, and she doesn't know how to disable it. Tucker offers to teach her, but as soon as he grabs the gun, he takes it back. Experience realizes that she's been tricked and leaves them. She goes to continue searching for Grant, who's in another part of the forest. His behavior has become very strange because of the infection, although he defends animal rights and the environment. The disease makes him lose control of himself. He finds a small rabbit in the forest and eats it alive. At that time, Tucker and Henry return to the pickup truck and are surprised again. Experience apologizes for threatening them and reveals that she broke into the farm to prevent the horrific experiments being conducted on animals. Henry doesn't understand her, but before he can ask her, Tucker notices smoke coming out of Mike's house, one of the three workers. They go there and finds a pot of pasta lit on the stove, and the kitchen is in a mess. There must have been a fight or a quarrel inside the house. Tucker looks for Mike, but instead of finding him, he finds the small sheep with the injured snout reappears, and chaos ensues as the group tries to escape. They hide in one of the rooms, but find Mike lying there with his neck completely eaten. The zombie sheep manages to break through the door, forcing Tucker to shoot it with the rifle. After this confrontation, the trio decides to leave the area, only to find more infected sheep outside the house. Fortunately, these sheep appear to be slow-moving, but Henry's phobia still prevents him from getting close. Experience helps him face his fear, asking him to focus only on her voice and not think about anything else. The plan works, and the two almost reach the truck. Suddenly, a zombie sheep jumps into the truck and tries to bite Henry. Tucker speeds up the truck in an attempt to get rid of the animal. Henry tries to save his friend and turns on a chainsaw that was in the box. The uneven road causes the boy to throw the chainsaw in the middle of the path. The collisions continue, and despite Tucker trying to get rid of the sheep, it eventually bites his leg. Nonetheless, Tucker manages to free himself and escapes to the back of the truck. The vehicle continues moving driverless toward the edge of a cliff. The truck is about to fall, but Henry, Experience, Tucker, and Tucker's dog jump out of the vehicle just in time, which then crashes with full force into the lake below. The group survives, but still needs to reach the farm and figure out what is happening. Nearby, Grant is wandering aimlessly around the farm, not knowing where he's going. His body is increasingly affected by the infection. His teeth are changing shape, and white hair resembling sheep's wool begins to grow on his face. As he walks, Grant accidentally encounters Angus. Angus is annoyed to see the boy standing in the middle of the road. He gets out of his car to see what's going on, but in an involuntary move, Grant bites Angus on his hand and flees. Back to Henry and his companions, they continue their journey to the farm. However, Tucker starts feeling unwell due to the bite on his leg. When he takes off his shoe to check the wound, he is horrified to find that his leg has transformed into a sheep's hoof. They must find an antidote quickly, or Tucker will turn into a hybrid creature, half human, half sheep. The situation worsens when they see more infected sheep on the mountain, appearing and running toward the group at an alarming speed. Tucker orders his dog to return home, and despite his injured leg, he does everything he can to escape with Henry and Experience. After great effort, they reach the secret lab and find a sheep's corpse hanging inside. The three are terrified by the experiments being conducted in this place. Suddenly, they come face to face with Angus and Dr. Astrid. Henry tries to warn his brother that the sheep are spreading an infection everywhere, but his brother doesn't believe him. Angus claims he's only trying to produce genetically modified sheep to present his invention to investors at a trade show, making his project more profitable. Henry tries to convince him and asks Tucker to show his brother what the infection has done to his leg. However, Dr. Astrid injects Tucker with a sedative, causing him to collapse. Henry attempts to help his friend, but Tucker urges him to escape the lab with escape the lab with Experience. With no other choice, the two flee. Once again, the sheep chase them, cornering them at a well where the remains of experiments were being discarded. Angus appears shortly after, and Henry pleads with his brother to help him, but Angus refuses, saying he won't ruin his plan. As the sheep get closer, Henry and Experience slip into the well, landing amidst dismembered animal remains. With no other option, they navigate through the tunnel in search of an exit. Experience lights a candle to illuminate the way, and when they reach the end of the tunnel, they find only a small opening, barely large enough to squeeze through. However, the girl refuses to enter. Just as Henry fears the sheep, Experience has claustrophobia and cannot muster the courage to pass through the narrow space. Things worsen when they hear the sound of sheep approaching, meaning they've jumped into the well and are coming after them. Henry calms her, telling her to focus on his voice, just as she helped him face his fears. With his encouragement, she overcomes her fear and passes through the tight space. However, the sheep close in, trying to bite Henry's leg. The girl reaches the exit and pulls Henry through, leaving the sheep stuck on the other side of the tunnel. Henry finishes them off by setting them all on fire with the candle. Experience thanks him for saving her life. Finally, Henry and Experience manage to escape the tunnel and rush to the stable to clean themselves. Suddenly, they hear a strange noise inside the stable. When they investigate, they are shocked to find a massive hybrid creature, half human, half sheep. The creature approaches them, but Experience notices it is wearing the same clothes as her colleague, meaning it is Grant. The infection has transformed him into a hybrid. The girl tries to remind him of who he is, but he ignores her and throws Henry aside with a single blow. Helping each other, the two run out of the stable. Henry locks the zombie-like hybrid creature inside, trapping it. They manage to escape the monster, but Henry fears that his friend Tucker might undergo the same transformation. As expected, back at the lab, Tucker is already beginning to change. His teeth start resembling sheep's teeth. Dr. Astrid takes a sample of the antidote to test it, but before giving it to him, she decides to wait and observe how the sample reacts to the infection. Within minutes, Tucker transforms into a hybrid creature, half human, half sheep, just like what happened to Grant. Immediately afterward, Dr. Astrid uses the antidote, successfully reversing the transformation and returning the test subject to normal. The doctor is thrilled with the results of her research and takes a sample from Tucker to replicate the effect. However, as soon as she leaves the lab, she finds her assistant being devoured by zombie sheep. The scientist tries to escape toward the forest, but her leg gets stuck in a muddy puddle. As she struggles to get up, she sees the hooves of a zombie sheep. Without hesitation, the sheep begins to devour her. Meanwhile, Angus returns to the farm, preparing for his presentation to investors. But when he looks in the mirror, he notices his face is paler than usual, and the bite on his hand is worsening. Despite this, he takes the stage and presents the revolutionary results of his experiments to the guests. Finally, Angus orders his assistants to open a specific part of the stage, revealing Oldfield, a sheep entirely cloned in the lab. Everyone is amazed by the animal, but Oldfield begins bleeding loudly and incessantly, as if something terrible is about to happen. This premonition comes true when dozens of zombie sheep storm the presentation, attacking everyone in their path. Chaos ensues, and Angus is unable to stop what's happening. As he tries to escape, he encounters another infected sheep. However, instead of attacking him, the sheep walks away. Angus is puzzled, but upon looking at his wound, he discovers that his hand has transformed into a massive sheep's hoof. All signs indicate that these creatures do not attack those who are already infected like them, and it's only a matter of time before he turns into a hybrid himself. Shortly after, Henry and the others arrive at the scene and witness the sheep attack. Senora Mac appears with her car, picking them up and taking them back to the farm. On the way, they find the road filled with flesh-eating sheep. When night falls, they reach the house and try to call for help from the kitchen phone, but all the lines are disconnected. The house is breached, and Henry is knocked down by a creature. In a moment of despair, Henry tries to fight back, taking Senora Mac's rifle but finds it empty. The hybrid creature throws him to the ground, leaving Henry unable to defend himself. But he is saved when someone strikes Grant with a wooden stick on the neck, rendering him unconscious. They manage to win this confrontation, but the zombie sheep quickly begin to surround the place, threatening to invade the house. Henry uses furniture to barricade the door, and Senora Mac informs them of a phone in Angus's office. Henry rushes there and, to his surprise, finds his brother and Oldfield hiding inside the office. Furious at his brother's actions, which caused all this chaos, Henry decides to take matters into his own hands. He grabs his father's old rifle and vows to eliminate all the creatures, starting with Oldfield. However, Angus stands in front of the sheep, declaring he won't let Henry harm it because the sheep was cloned using his own genes. Angus also reveals that he has been infected too, and will soon become part of the zombie sheep herd. After hearing this, Henry threatens to shoot his brother but ultimately returns the rifle. He then reunites with Senora Mac and Experience, calling them to escape together. Before leaving, he takes his father's old cup. As they reach the house's exit, the three see the place surrounded by sheep, with Angus and Oldfield among them. They flee toward the private airstrip, where Henry deduces his brother plans to escape the country by plane. However, if Angus leaves, the infection could spread to more places, so Henry decides to stop him. Looking at his arm, Henry discovers he was bitten during the confrontation with Grant. Realizing he's now a danger to Senora Mac and Experience, he leaves them in the car, urging them to escape. Once again, the girl is impressed by Henry's bravery and tells him to return as soon as possible. Henry now has to figure out how to sneak past the sheep without being noticed. He finds a fur coat in the car and disguises himself as a sheep, blending into the herd while nervously hoping not to be discovered. Using his cup, he strikes a sheep to push it away, but this reveals his identity. However, due to the infection spreading in his body, the sheep and hybrid creatures let him pass. Senora Mac and Experience decide to help Henry, and with the car and rifle, they set out to fight the zombie sheep. Meanwhile, Angus starts the plane to escape with Oldfield, but the infection reaches its peak, causing him to suffer severe transformations. His teeth fall out, his face deforms, and his hands turn into sheep hooves as he screams in pain. Henry arrives at the location, searching for his brother in the hangar. Suddenly, Angus ambushes him, pinning him against the wall and revealing his new hybrid appearance. Henry tries to remind Angus of their past, saying if he hadn't done what he did when they were younger, they could have taken care of the farm together. But Angus doesn't listen and continues his attack. Henry is forced to strike him with the cup on the neck, but even that isn't enough to stop him. The transformation intensifies, making Angus stronger than a typical hybrid. Henry attempts to grab the rifle, but the creature knocks it away and pushes him aside. At that moment, Angus's plane starts circling the airstrip, and Henry decides to use it to his advantage. Tucker's small dog shows up, barking to distract the hybrid creature. Henry tells the dog to keep barking, ensuring Angus doesn't notice the plane approaching from behind. The plan works, and the creature is destroyed by the plane's fan, collapsing lifelessly. Henry notices his arm showing signs of transformation and is distracted when Angus suddenly stands up behind him, ready to attack again. Fortunately, Tucker arrives in a jeep and injects a substance into Angus's mouth. He then does the same to Henry, who experiences a strong physical reaction but quickly returns to normal, cured of the infection. Tucker explains he managed to retrieve the antidote from the lab and can now restore everyone to their original state. Angus is also reverted to human form, but is left severely injured from the battle. They leave him on the ground and later reunite with Experience, explaining everything that happened. Now, they must gather all the zombie sheep into the barn and use the antidote, though there isn't enough for all of them. Suddenly, Angus reappears despite his injuries. Although cured of the infection, he tries to control the sheep to continue his plan. However, since he's no longer infected, the sheep no longer recognize him as one of their own and begin to attack him. Henry, having lost his brother, throws a lit match into the barn, setting it and the zombie sheep ablaze. The next morning, Henry and his companions round up all the infected hybrid creatures and begin treating them with the antidote, including Grant, who finally returns to normal and regrets eating other animals while transformed. In the end, Henry decides to keep his father's farm and live there with Experience and Tucker. Tucker's small dog remains vigilant on the farm, but is later seen bleeding like a sheep, hinting that it too is infected. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to get more new videos. See you next time.